Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a Ben McGreevy Sports Podcast. You'll notice I did not say another because it has been a while. I will say that for all of us, life has gotten really busy with just like work and parenthood and everything else. We haven't stopped watching hockey. It's just sometimes it's hard to find a time to sit down and do this type of stuff. But now we get to just sit here, bring back a video to you guys, and hopefully we'll, as the end of the year kind of starts ramping up a little bit and there's some interesting hockey being played. I don't know about you guys, like February, like is always my favorite part of the NHL season, and that's like an unpopular opinion, I think. But I just love how like all the teams are what they are. They're in their midseason form, and it's a slog trying to get to the end. And so that's where we are right now, and I'm absolutely loving it. But how are you guys doing, just like in life? You guys feeling good?
Feeling great.
Yeah,
So,
pretty good.
How's the hockey
parent
watching been going? Like, have you guys gotten to sit down and watch as much as you've wanted, or has it been less than you've wanted?
going to games has been a lot less this year, at least for me. I'm sure it has with Heath too, since he flies a lot. Um,
Me too, not living
but
there. Yeah.
it's been kind of nice though to just sit on the couch and casually catch a game now that ESPN Plus is
Mm.
having a game 3 or 4 nights a week. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So
And
it's a lot
every
easier to
game is
catch
there.
up. Yeah, it's a lot easier to catch up on other teams and how they're doing, which is something I'm learning to enjoy more.
Absolutely. It's so enjoyable. I've started making a playlist on this channel actually every single morning. I like get to work and make it and throw it on my TV in my office and like just on mute. But it's like I just do a playlist of all the NHL highlights from the night before. So like from 7:45, 8 until 3, I just have highlights going on in the background. I like will glance up, see a play, and I'm like, oh, that's neat, and then go back to what I'm doing. But kind of a neat thing to track hockey in that way, which is has been really nice. But what I want us to do today is I want us to talk Nashville Predators because if we were to sit here and look 8 days ago, the Nashville Predators get blown out by the Dallas Stars 9-2 at home. The saga of canceling the U2 concert happens. All that takes place. Nashville doesn't, the Predators team doesn't get to go. It's Trot sending a message to the home fans. This is according to 32 Thoughts and Elliot Friedman, that Trotz wanted to send a message to the home fans. We don't accept losing, so we're taking this away from the players. Since then, Nashville goes into St. Louis, wins. They go into Vegas, win. They go into Vegas or Los Angeles, three playoff teams, 3 wins. I want us to start out, and I'll throw this. We'll go to Heath first, just for funsies. Uh, what are we feeling about this team like right now? Where are they? What does it mean? I don't know what to think about this team. Heath, what do you kind of think about them?
It's hard to say. I mean, this is the team all season that's been kind of just, one week they're ready to go, the next week they're just flat on their face, not figuring this stuff out. Um, but I mean, I like where they're at. At least they're still, I think you and I talked about it a little bit last week after that Dallas loss. It seemed like this team was this season was probably going to be done for and whatnot. And this 5 game road trip coming up was looking pretty abysmal for this hockey team. So I like where they're at. I mean, they're competing for a playoff spot here, at least in the wild card position, and getting two of those wins, especially against the Blues and the Kings. Both of those teams are in those two wild card spots. Um, Huge wins, but they've got to finish out the road trip here. But I like where they're at. I mean, they're in a good position. If they make playoffs, awesome. Hopefully, they can sneak in there. But I think they have a good opportunity too. They just got to keep playing. They can't continue this roller coaster of, hey, we're good for a week and then turn around the next week and just fall flat on their face.
Yeah. Cole, any thoughts?
Yeah, when Heath and I were sitting at that abysmal Dallas Stars game, we on the way there, I heard on Jared Stillman's show that he and some of the other media talked to Trotz, and Trotz was basically like, "Yeah, the in order to not have a fire sale by the deadline, we need to win roughly 2 out of every 3 games." me and Heath were looking, we're like, well, out of LA, St. Louis, and Vegas, they might win one of those. San Jose coming up might be their best chance. And look, they've won 3 in a row. I'm kind of like Heath. I don't know really what to make of this team because they're scrappy. They're fighting for their wins, but when they lose 2 or 3 in a row, it's ugly losses. I mean, you look at Dallas, you look at the New Jersey Devils game, they're just not it looks like it's a completely different team. So it is kind of hard to pinpoint other than the semi-weak goaltending that we've had this year, kind of what the issue is. So
I agree. You know, it's interesting. Something that always tells me a little bit about a team is differential. You look at all the teams that are in their like the Central and Pacific playoff spots, and their differentials are massive. It's like plus 35, plus 29, plus 37, plus 51. Vancouver, hello, plus 22 for Vegas, plus 36 for Oilers. Then you have the Kings at plus 21, and then it's Nashville and St. Louis are at St. Louis is at -6 and Nashville's at -7. And both those teams are over 500. It's this weird reality where it's like Nashville's winning games by the grit of their teeth, but when they lose, like you just said, Cole, it's really ugly. And so it's like they'll go on a streak and you're like, well, they won 3 in a row. But then it's like, but they also just lost 9-2 to Dallas. But
right,
maybe that's just an off night. I don't really, I guess if you don't lose 9-2 to Dallas, your differential's probably looking way better. You know, like if you lose that game like 3-2, your differential is only -1, which is
yeah.
a fair point. But it still is not like what these other teams are. And so I don't really know. I do we feel like they're even a playoff like they're on the playoff bubble? Do we feel like they're a playoff team? Do we not feel like they're a playoff team? Kind of where do you put them? Like if you were to just look at them and say, what do you think they are? What do you look at them as?
I don't think they're a playoff team, and I feel bad saying that because there's a lot of players on this team that have been here a while that we love and would love to see raise a cup.
Yeah,
But we've got a new coach. We got a first time new GM who has been had a fantastic career as a head coach. We've got a lot of young talent. Milwaukee is producing like we've never seen before,
unbelievable. 18.
and
18.
we're just so young at the core.
Yeah,
I don't think, and this isn't me being pessimistic. I just don't think this team, if they got into playoffs, would do anything significant.
yeah.
I think I would rather just get a little more during the draft, prospect a little bit in the offseason, come back a little stronger in Brunette's second year. That's just my take.
And I actually want to get to those takes, not now. And I will get back to that in a little bit. I want us to talk more about that. But like, we'll come back to that kind of at the end of this, just kind of where we stand and maybe what we want to do type thing. Um, but I want to like let's kind of move into you talk playoffs, you know, maybe not. Heath, real quick, do you think they're a playoff team? I guess I didn't even ask this.
Um, no. I I think they're a fringe. I mean, if they're anything, they're a fringe playoff team.
Yeah,
I don't like they don't get a lot of depth scoring still. It's kind of hit and miss, I guess you could say. But
yeah,
I don't like either you don't know what team's showing up every night. I mean, I mentioned this in our group text earlier. I mean, for all we know, this team's going to show up on Saturday night in San Jose and just get wrecked by 2 bottom feeders coming up.
yeah.
So they could make the playoffs. I just don't foresee them doing much if they do.
You know what I'm struggling with in this is like when I look at the teams that are around them and I compare rosters, I don't necessarily think that Nashville's roster is any worse than, and hear me out, St. Louis, Seattle, Calgary, Minnesota. You know, I think their roster is notably worse than Los Angeles and Edmonton and Vegas and
Yeah.
Vancouver and Winnipeg and Colorado and Dallas. Like, yeah, way worse than those teams. Like,
Yep.
but are they a wild card team, Rob? Like, I don't know why they're
Probably.
less of a wild card team than like St. Louis or Seattle or Calgary. You know, it's just like I
Yeah.
don't know real like that's kind of where I am. It's like you just have a lot of these like weird middle range, lower middle range teams that are also like the eighth best team that kind of exist there. And it's like, well, maybe that's something where it's gonna end up being okay for Nashville a little bit. But like, okay, so let's say we're in that range, and that's where we are right now. Nashville's tied with St. Louis for that spot. St. Louis has a game in hand. Is that enough? Like, what is it going to take to sell it? The trade deadline is March 8th. What does it take to sell at the trade deadline? What does it take to just sit still? Are you ever going to buy at the trade deadline this year? Kind of like, where do you guys think on these type of things?
Um, I think this is a team that if I think Trotz or maybe did you just mention this, Cole? He'd said what was it, two out of
Two
every
out of
three
three.
games that they
Yeah.
had to win.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, you're sitting on 3 wins right now, but really, this I was looking at the schedule the other day. This team doesn't have that brutal of a schedule to finish off the
Yeah,
season. Um, I definitely don't think you're a buyer at all. Like, there's
yeah, I agree.
no chance at all they're a buyer. Um, I don't think if they go on a if they continue to win here, maybe they drop the Sharks game or the Anaheim in a back to back or something, but they continue to win over the next 10 games. Let's say they win 75 to 80% of those, then maybe you don't sell. I mean, unless that really good deal comes through, I still think you may try to deal off Saros. I really do. Um, but and maybe that's a discussion for another day. But um, I don't know. I mean, this is a team that I think at some point, if they continue to lose, yeah, I think you do so.
Okay, so I actually have an interesting take on this, and I want to walk through. I think right now, I, I think it's Nashville or St. Louis really battling for this last wild card spot. I mean, you look at the points on it. Not Seattle's there. Let's not pretend they're not. Um, and they've been fine. But I really want to look at Nashville and St. Louis because I think that those two are the ones that are battling out. And as I say that, Calgary's there too, but Calgary I know is looking to sell. So let's talk Nashville, St. Louis here. And maybe we'll pull up Seattle just to do that as well. But you look at Nashville's schedule before the deadline, okay? You have San Jose. You're better than San Jose on paper. You got
Yep.
Anaheim, better than them on paper. Ottawa, they're playing well, playing real well, but you're better than them on paper. Minnesota, you're better than Minnesota on paper in terms of record. Okay, so that's the next four games
Yeah.
should be wins. You have Colorado, that's probably a loss, right? But then you have Montreal, worse than you on paper. Buffalo, worse than you on paper. And then that next day is the trade deadline, which is the trade deadline normally on a Friday. I feel like it's not, but it is apparently this year.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
this year it is.
And then you go Columbus, back to Minnesota, and then you have a couple. Then you still have San Jose in that mix, Arizona still in that mix, and Detroit is an interesting one as well, and Seattle's an interesting one. You look at that and you compare it to like a St. Louis Blues, who like their next games are Detroit, Winnipeg,
Yeah,
Edmonton, and then they go in and they have Philly, the Islanders, New Jersey. Like when you sit there
Not
and start,
easy.
no, it's not. Like I'm sitting there and I'm saying, maybe, maybe Nashville legitimately has a shot to be in a really like, could they have a 6 point lead on this playoff spot going into the trade deadline? I don't know. Is that crazy to say?
I think if you do, and I know Heath said we definitely don't need to be buyers,
I
but
definitely agree with that. Oh, but
if
were you
if
gonna
you're up 6 points on the trade deadline, you need it would not hurt if you're even thinking playoffs. You might as well go for something. I would not hate for them to pick up some sort of depth scoring.
hmm,
Outside of
Mm.
Forsberg and O'Reilly, you have nobody consistently getting the puck in the net.
here's
And
my
you're relying on
question.
the bunch of young guys. So we'll see.
Do you pull any of these like kind of stars up from Milwaukee and see if they can be that piece? Like
yeah,
Joakim
Maybe.
Kimmel? Like these
yeah. I
guys
mean,
who you're like hoping are going to be NHL guys. Like, do you pull? And that's a foolish thing to say. Hey, pull a guy who's played one NHL or two NHL games into the NHL to be your piece. But it is an interesting thought. Heath, were you
yeah.
about
I
to say
mean,
something?
well, I'll just say, really, are we? So let's say this team makes the playoffs and as a number 8, the final wild card slot. They're probably not going to do anything anyway in that 1st round.
Yeah.
What do you have to lose by calling somebody up?
Yeah.
That might be
You
the
know,
smarter route.
and then
That way you're not
even if
losing anything.
you're now kind of, this isn't even a word, but preparing or pre-preparing for the upcoming off season for going into next season. How is your roster going to shape out going into next season, and where do you stand on how does this team going to look going into the next season? But I know we're going to get to that a little bit later. So
Well, and something I'll say is this is like also, by the way, Seattle does not have an easy schedule over the next few
no, they
games
don't.
either.
No.
So you're sitting there and you're looking at Nashville and you're like, hey, maybe these guys are going to be the ones who are kind of falling into that spot, based on sketch strength of the schedule. Now, as we've talked about, they could go poop the bed against some of these
Yeah,
teams and just be absolutely garbage. But I do wonder, like, I will say this as well. I would kind of like to see Nashville. I would kind of like to see Nashville make a couple of trades. Like, I think I would like to see Tyson Berry traded.
yeah,
If you can, I know like Toronto's looking for a right D. If you can go out and get even like a third or a second or third round pick for Barry, like let's be fair, you traded Ekholm for Barry, you got a first rounder out of that. Like if you can flip Ekholm for a first and a third, like isn't that worth it? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
stuff like that I wonder. I would love to see Barry. Is there anyone else that you guys would like to see traded? Like
I mean,
like just to get assets?
if the value for Soros is there that the Preds would want, I don't hate the idea of trading him. But
Mhm.
with the way he's been playing this year, our team's going to pay that for a goaltender going into this year's Stanley Cup playoffs. Because let's be honest, Soros isn't the hot hand right now. We've won some
Yeah.
games, but he is not the hot hand
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
true.
So how is that value going to stack up if you trade him?
I think that and Heath, you can talk to this as a goalie, but like I think the question is out of the teams in playoff spots, who needs a goal? Like Jersey needs a goalie bad, like real bad. If they even want to make the playoffs, I don't think they are going to. But like if they wanted to, they need a goalie. Like Carolina needs a goalie. Um, Philly probably needs a goalie. Like
they do.
who is the team? Who are the teams that like need a goalie right now? Like, is Edmonton really the team that needs a goalie, or is Skinner like heating up? I don't know. I would love, and we kind of talked about this. If I could get a elite prospect, a first round draft pick, and maybe like a casual player out of Saros, I think you do it, right?
I would all day.
Yeah,
I think
I think so.
alone, if you get a really good prospect in the first round pick, I think it's worth it.
Especially with what
Yeah,
Askarov is doing
Yes.
in the
yeah,
minors and what he's expected to be. At some point you're gonna have to sign Saros. But if Askarov he's younger. So if he's gonna be the guy, you just make the switch because you
Yep.
don't want like at some point you'd rather have more options instead of one option with some luxuries. And that's what I wonder if that's kind of where we are right now. I guess okay, let's talk as fanboys. Let's turn off our brains that think in the way of uh, organization and things like that. What do you kind of expect for this season? What would make you happy? A Stanley Cup is probably not going to happen, and I'm willing to accept that. So, what brings you guys like if you were to say if this happens this season, I'd feel content. What would you guys say would bring you some contentment on this season?
It's funny because I said going into this season, I have no high expectations given the new coach and all that, like you said. Um, what would make me happy would be seeing the development of these young players and saying, okay, in the next few years, we're going to be really good.
Yeah.
I don't really need to make playoffs. If there's a way for us to get better without making playoffs, that's fine. Because
Yeah.
as much as I love going into the Stone for a playoff hockey game, it when you get shut out, it sucks. Let's just be real.
Yep.
So, as long as I'm seeing the player development, that makes me happy. If I can see the team make strides under a brand new head coach and know that the train is on the tracks, go in the right direction, I'm cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat as Cole. I mean, I don't think I had terribly high expectations for this team going into the season. And yeah, if they make playoffs, awesome. That's great. Cool. I don't think they're going to make it through the first round. I mean, maybe they will, maybe they won't. You never know. I mean, it's one of those things, but I doubt they do. Um, but if they don't make playoffs, I just want to see some consistent hockey. That's all
Yeah.
I mean, and like you're saying, Cole, development of these players, of these younger guys, and where this team's going to end up being in the next, 2 or 3 years. What you don't want is, you know, them not to try to start developing, and then you end up in like a never ending rebuild that and I get they don't want to admit to it because I'd mentioned this in the text the other day, and with the way the market is in Nashville. Um, but you don't want to end up in that situation of it just never, you're just constantly fighting for maybe a wild card spot if
It
you're lucky.
destroys franchises.
Yeah, I mean, the only way those franchises stay alive are the original six. You look at Chicago, who's just
I actually did some research the other day outside of the original Ottawa Senators, like the OG Ottawa Senators that stopped existing in like the 30s.
yeah,
There has not been a team that has won a Stanley Cup that has ceased to exist. I think
yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah, it is. But yeah, I mean,
Oh,
I'm happy with this hockey team just as long as they continue to play. I just like I said, I really would like some consistent hockey, not this up and down every week thing.
Yeah.
I'll go back to the trade thing real quick. One player I did not think of would be Yakov Trinan, mainly because look at the value you got for Tanner
Oh,
Jeannot when you send him to Tampa to be that nosebleeder
Goodness.
that's going to be physical in playoffs. Think of a guy like Yakov Trinan you could throw on your fourth line to bust some heads in playoffs. Might get something for him, and he's not really doing anything for us.
I would
So
love to get rid of him.
I do not think you could get much for him,
No,
I
I
don't
don't
think
think
so
there's
either.
I don't think
and
there's
and
anything
I
for him.
would love to and like this,
That
nothing
sounds terrible
personal
too.
against Trennan. It's just like I don't know. He is so streaky
Oh, it's
and it's
awful.
just
And
it's like
he
mm,
takes just every game. It seems like he takes some of the most not smart
Penalties.
penalties. And
bad
Yeah.
penalty last night.
inopportune last night, inopportune penalty at a horrible time.
Yep.
Granted, they ended up winning, but they scored because it was a 5-on-3.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Now, okay, to me, I maybe take a little bit of a different approach with you guys. Like if Nashville misses the playoffs at this point, I think I'm going to be a little bit disappointed, strictly because I think that when I look at rosters, here's what I see. I see Saros, who is honestly a pretty good player. And like, yeah, he's having a down year, but like who he is, even in his down year, is still good. You've got Lankinen, a solid backup. You still have Yossi on this team. You still have Ryan McDonough on this team. You still have Philip Forsberg on this team. Ryan O'Reilly, Gus Nyquist has been really solid this year. Colton Sissons has looked really good. Um,
He's
I
your
just want
third leading scorer on the team, by the way.
crazy. I mean,
Insane.
he's been good.
Yeah.
And you sit there and you say, okay, look at this. There's some actually decent pieces on here. I would love for these. Novak's a pretty good player, and like for for a guy who Nashville got in a third round in 2015, like he's turned out to be pretty solid. I would love to sit back and say, okay, if Nashville can make the first round of the playoffs and win two playoff games, what it would mean for some of these younger guys to sit in a locker room with Ryan McDonough and Ryan O'Reilly in the playoffs. Would just, I don't care that they would lose. It would sting to get swept. If you're going to go get swept, don't make the playoffs. But I think they're good enough. And if they could go in and win, I really do think like if you win, when I'm looking at these next one, two, three, is it 4 games before before the deadline or let's see here,
No, you got 1, 2, 3, 4.
7 games
Yeah.
Yeah, you
before
got
the
quite a
deadline.
few. Yeah.
If you go get that's a potential 14 points. I think if you go get 10 out of 14 points, I think you're kind of going to make it. I really
Yeah.
do. And I'm okay. Like the excitement, like you guys said, of being in Bridgestone Arena for a playoff game is what this franchise needs really badly right now. And so for
Yeah.
me, I won't be wrecked if they miss the playoffs, but I will say if they could trade Barry, get some assets, if they could trade maybe one other guy who's not doing much, get some assets, and walk into the playoffs and win a couple games, I'm in. I'm all in.
Yeah.
I
But
Yeah.
can I can somewhat agree with that. I think it would be like you said. I think it would be good for the franchise, especially after the past few years that we've had of just
I mean,
inconsistent play, poor coaching, you name it. It's happened. So it
th-
could do a lot of good to win a couple games.
I think it would be really good. I mean, now that you mention it, I mean, this team pretty much hasn't made playoffs for 2 years. You can say they made playoffs against Colorado Avalanche, but they got absolutely annihilated. I
thanks, big
mean,
save, Dave.
so yeah.
What a year. What a year.
So it would be really nice for them to make playoffs.
By
It
the way,
really
right
would.
now, if they were to make playoffs, it looks like they'd probably play Vancouver. And I don't know. Although Vancouver's been bad recently,
Yeah.
relatively speaking, but so have every team that they're going to play. Like nobody's been
Yeah.
consistent, um, outside of the Coyotes and Blackhawks who stink. But
Yeah.
like no one's been consistent. So kind of it's like this. Maybe this could work out. I do look at it's interesting. That's an interesting thing. Florida's been really good. Toronto's been really good. Rangers have been really good. Hurricanes have been really good. Other than that, most people are sitting there like just in that middle, like last 10 of like 5-3-2, 3-3-1. Like those gross, not 3-3-1's only 7 games. Like 4-4-2. Like gross numbers like that. Very interesting to sit there and say like nobody's playing really well. So like we can get
Mhm.
frustrated in our little Nashville bubble, being like, there's no consistency. They stink. Then you go look at everyone else and it's like,
Yeah.
everyone stinks. No one's
Yeah.
consistent right now, and it's just kind of interesting to me.
It's wild that Toronto is so talented, yet they're going to lose again in the second round.
Oh, if
I think if they go
not
in
the first
five,
round.
Go Leafs. Second round. Second round. They're talented enough for the second round.
But they have to play Florida in the first round.
I
That's true. That is true.
And I hate to tell Toronto fans
don't
this.
think Florida. I think Florida would have been that.
I like
I would
the
hope so. I'm a
philosophy.
big Florida guy.
Hey,
We're a
uh,
big Florida podcast, actually.
hey, I'm sure there are Florida Panthers fans who like tune into this. The amount of comments we get on from Florida Panthers fans in these videos just be like, you guys got to come to Florida for another game. Like, guys, we live so far away from Fort Lauderdale area.
But if
Yeah.
you want to supplement our flights with points, we will happily go.
Hey, it
I
doesn't have
fall
to
out
be
sick.
points. You can do they call them it's super chats, right? I don't know if that's not only in live videos. You can super chat us
Yeah.
$400 and we'll be there.
We need to go. We need
We
to go
would love
live.
to show. Yeah, we do. We
We need
absolutely
to do
need to do
that.
that at some point. But hey boys, anything else you want to add in on the Nashville Predators front before we close this out?
I don't think so. I think we're in for a fun ending to the season. Like you said, February is always where the dice are
This
rolling
is.
and the tides are turning. So
I
we're
mean,
gonna
yeah,
see what happens.
yeah. This
Absolutely.
is this is the grind here in the last 25 or so games. So
I want Soros to get red hot. I want
I
it so bad.
If Saros gets hot, Nashville could legitimately go like Saros
oh
could win you a
yeah,
playoff round. He's
oh
that
yeah,
Oh
good.
yeah,
If he gets
yeah,
absolutely.
hot,
We've seen it.
yep.
Why
yeah.
not?
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. All right, boys. Thank you guys so much for hopping on. If you guys have any thoughts, leave it in the comments below on what you think the Nashville Predators are going to do this year. If you enjoyed this conversation about the Nashville Predators, be sure to share it with a friend. That would mean a lot to us. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next video.